Duclair Charvin, Decarlin High Schooler, Grand Orbital Trade Station, 542. The chatter of a dozen conversations in as many different languages washed over me as I entered the cafeteria. It had been a while since I ate here, seeing as there wasn't really a place for me. A part of me felt like this was a terrible idea, like I should just run and hide. But I had to take the chance. I couldn't keep going like this. The constant teasing, being excluded from every activity and group, they had even escalated to accidentally tripping me when I walked by in the halls, not to mention my lunch had mysteriously disappeared. For the third day in a row, I knew my people were not well regarded in the greater galactic community, but I didn't think living among the other species would be this bad. I had been attending school at the Grand Orbital Trade Station 542 for almost a year. My father worked as an ambassador for the embassy our people had opened here. It was part of an effort to reach out and make connections across the galaxy, and it had not been going well. Even worse, we had spread so thin across so many stations that I was the only Decarlin youth attending the school. With no connections and no one of my own species, I was all alone, a prime target for those who looked down on us. Which is why I set my sights on the newest species to join the Galactic community, humans. They had only arrived about 2 years ago, but already they had made a name for themselves. We first heard of them when they freed a colony of Vulthians that were being held hostage in a border dispute. And just a few months ago, one of their merchant ships not only repelled, but captured a Lecaran pirate vessel. Nobody had ever done that before, and there had only been 2 humans on board. So, when a dozen human students arrived with their diplomatic and merchant envoy last week, I began to look through what information was available on them. From my research, I was able to seize upon some valuable insight. Humans evolved as social, pack predators with a propensity to pack bond even outside their own species. If I can take advantage of that, then I could finally have some allies. But if I fail, I will have drawn the ire of the most dangerous and unpredictable species on the whole station. Unfortunately, I did not have any classes with the humans, so approaching them privately was difficult. But we did share a lunch period. I spotted them across the room, the whole pack sticking together at the same table. I straightened my vest and tried to steady my nerves, as well as my growling stomach as I made my approach. Daniel Rogers, human high schooler, of all. The cultural exchanges that our people have done with the galaxy, I was glad to see that pizza had taken off as the newest trend. It had become so common that even the school cafeteria served it, although their insistence on making it in a giant sheet and cutting it into squares was both nostalgic and incredibly frustrating. I was musing on the nature of such galactic cuisine when I was interrupted by a nudge from my friend Jeremy. "Hey, Daniel, can I borrow your notes for galactic history?" Man, did you fall asleep again? That special human meditation excuse of yours is not going to last very long, especially if you keep snoring. Hey, I was not asleep this time. I was just thinking about other stuff. Besides, galactic history is boring. It's all just factions and politics and dates over and over again. I can barely remember the names of half the species in our class, let alone which ones went to war with each other 1,000 years ago. He slumped down and put his head on the table, turning his face to look out over the cafeteria. Like that little deer guy over there, I have no idea what they are. I turned to follow his gaze and spotted the small alien in question. It was only about 3 feet tall, but it had 2 of most things like us humans did. 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, 2 cloven feet, 2 leaf-shaped ears poking out to the side, and 2 small horns, or maybe antlers, sticking out from the back of its narrow head. Okay, not that much like a human, but more like us than some of the weirder ones around. It was also sporting a fashionable grass-green vest, matching messenger bag, and khaki-colored shorts. Just a quick reminder before we get started, only 4% of my viewers have subscribed to the channel so far. If you enjoy the content, I'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to hit that subscribe button and support the channel. Thank you so much. Now continue amazing story. As we watched a thin tail lashed out from one of the other tables as the small alien passed and caught it in the ankle, sending them tumbling to the floor. The table of flat-faced pale blue Xenos erupted in laughter. I had seen them around before, and if I had to guess, I would say that they were some kind of amphibians. About 5 feet tall at most, they were all clad in what looked like short-sleeved black unitards made of some rubbery space material. Possibly an environmental accommodation, judging by the small status panel on the shoulder. I didn't need to hear the apology to tell that it was dripping with sarcasm. It was clear from their shit-eating grin full of pointed teeth and the way they cackled as the little deer walked away. A low came from Jeremy as the scene concluded. Thousands of light years, and they're still assholes, I muttered. Should we do something about that? He asked, propping his head back up on one hand. I sighed. No. Dad said we are here to learn and observe, and that we shouldn't criticize or disrupt any alien cultures or relationships. Well, my dad said if anyone fucks with us, I should kick their ass to set the appropriate precedent. That's why your dad is in charge of security and not interstellar xeno relations. He grunted as I went back to contemplating mediocre xeno pizza. I'd only taken a few bites when I was interrupted again, this time by a small whistling sound. The small deer alien was standing at the edge of our table, its head just coming over the top as it regarded me patiently. Hi. I don't believe we've met. We have not. I'm Duclair of the Decarlin people. He spoke in a high, whistling voice. Oh, well, I'm Daniel. This is Jeremy, and those two are Susan and Charlie. I gestured to the others immediately nearby. Charlie was not so subtly tapping on the far side of the table to get the attention of the rest of our group. What can we do for you, Duclair? I would like to join your pack, if I may. He hesitated for a moment before finishing in a rush. The four of us exchanged confused glances as we struggled to process the odd request. I'm sorry, did you say join our pack? Yes, I would like to know how to do so. Are there certain criteria I must meet, or some kind of ritual? Well, that's not really... Whoa, hang on a minute, Dan. Let's not be hasty here. Jeremy stopped me. Let us discuss, amongst the pack, while you entertain our guest. I wasn't sure how to feel about Jeremy's suspiciously formal tone as he scooted down the bench, leaning in to form a huddle with the rest of our group. They had clued in that something interesting was going on, and Jeremy was quickly filling them in with a hushed whisper. The poor Decarlin was left standing, nervously with his ears drooped low. Duclair, right? Why don't you tell us a bit about your people? I haven't heard of them before. All the whispering and giggling going on behind me was making me nervous, too. Maybe getting him talking would help both of us. That's not surprising. My people do not have much presence outside of our home world. As for our history, the short answer is that we were slaves. Charlie nearly choked on his drink across from me, and Susan gave him a few hearty slaps on the back as he coughed. The Neverans were our interstellar neighbors, he continued, glancing back at the table of pale blue Xenos. They found us when we were only just building telescopes. There was nothing we could do to stop them from taking over. Our world was stripped of resources, and our people enslaved for generations. We were only freed about a century ago when the Neverans entered the greater galactic community. Jeremy clapped his hand on my shoulder again as the rest of our group rose from the table. Wonderful history lesson. You will have to excuse us for a moment. Please continue to interview the applicant while we prepare the ritual. His voice dropped an octave and dripped with gravitas at those last words. The what now? I hissed at Jeremy. What the hell did those guys decide on back there? Jeremy just gave me a wink and slapped my shoulder again before striding out of the cafeteria with the rest of our group. The small Xeno in front of me was watching them go nervously, his ears flicking back and forth. So you were saying that your people were freed? Right. He struggled a bit to return to his train of thought. Slavery is illegal in the galactic community, so our freedom and the return of our homeworld was a requirement for them to join. Of course, there was not much left on our world. By that point, and we were given practically nothing to begin the rebuilding process. It took us decades to put our society back together, and while we were doing that, the Neverans established connections and spread their own version of our story, with themselves as benevolent uplifters. Now even the species that are not allied with them see us as tag-alongs who did not earn their place out here in the stars. So that's why they can get away with messing with you in the middle of the cafeteria. The small alien tensed for a moment before looking down with slumped shoulders. You saw that? Before I could answer, Jeremy appeared beside me, seemingly from thin air. The ritual is prepared. Follow me, he said dramatically and walked back out of the cafeteria. Duclair and I quickly caught up, and I leaned over to confer quietly. With Jeremy, I really don't like how you keep saying that. You guys are going to go easy on him, right? He's coming to us for help here. Yeah, man, don't worry about it. We're just going to have a little fun. I was becoming less sure of his definition of fun. We walked a short way down the hall and came to an empty classroom. Jeremy pushed the door open to reveal a dark space. All of the lights were off and the blinds were drawn. The desks had been pushed to the edges of the room, and the rest of our group was sitting in a circle in the middle of the room. They all had their datapads in their lap with the flashlight function on, illuminating each of them from below in an eerie glow. The applicant shall enter the circle. I'm pretty sure that was Susan doing her best impression of a TV judge. The poor DeCarlin looked like he might bolt for a moment as he looked up at me. I gave him a reassuring nod, and his vest swelled for a moment as he huffed and strode forward. Into the ring of humanity, Jeremy and I took our seats, closing off the circle. Jeremy's flashlight flicked on, and I quickly followed suit to complete the vibe. Prospect of the pack, what is your name and pronouns? Another voice called from elsewhere in the circle. I am Duclair Charven of the DeCarlin. My pronouns are he, him. He declared with what confidence he could muster. What is your request? Asked a different voice. We seemed to be taking turns, with each one trying to be as overly dramatic as possible. Seek to join the pack, he declared. Why do you seek this? He hesitated a moment before responding this time. I seek protection. Some of the mirth and mischief in the room drained as glances were shared around the circle. Most of them hadn't heard our little history lesson or seen the Neverins trip him in the cafeteria. Protection? Are there those who have wronged you? Yes. Do you seek retribution? One of the girls asked. Our small friend thought it over carefully. No, I seek only peace. What do you have to offer the pack? Asked Charlie this time. The poor guy looked confused, as did several of us who turned to look at Charlie. Snacks! The pack desires alien snacks, he clarified, drawing a punch to his shoulder from the one next to him, and some hushed whispers to cut it out. I had to agree. We really shouldn't be taking anything from the beleaguered Xeno. Duclair took it in stride and reached into his messenger bag, pulling out a small package. All I have is a Barum grain bar. Courtney was next, and I could see her brow furrow in the glow of her flashlight. All? That is not much, even for one of your size. The rest of my lunch disappeared from my locker, he said with downcast eyes. The curious glances from before became scowls as Susan spoke up again, abandoning the turn order. What is the diet of the DeCarlin people? Herbivore, leaves, fruits, and nuts, he responded. Some nods and whispers were exchanged among the group as Charlie spoke up again, still rubbing his punched shoulder. The pack shall provide to each in accordance with their needs and in consideration to their allergies. A few giggles were unsuccessfully stifled at the remark as the dramatic facade continued to crack. Are we ready to cast a vote? Thomas asked. A name, Jeremy declared. The applicant must be given a pack name. This brought further questioning looks and murmurs of disagreement. Only if the applicant agrees and approves, added Susan, and the others nodded in approval. Duclair, for his part, just looked confused. I guess that's fine. Then what do we propose? Little. Dear, Jeremy said without any hint of shame for his lack of creativity. Unacceptable. Courtney immediately shot him down. To reference size or animal would be disrespectful. Nods of agreement were followed by a moment of silence as we thought of another suggestion. Bambi, Charlie suggested hesitantly. He was immediately met with multiple groans and denials. The Duke, I declared, surprising myself at how swiftly the idea went from brain to mouth. It is a title of honor for a leader of noble birth. Duclair stood straighter at the mention of honor, and I swear his tiny tuft of a tail wiggled for a moment. I accept. Then we shall vote, all in favor of accepting Duclair of the DeCarlin, aka the Duke, as a member of the pack. The ayes were both enthusiastic and unanimous. All opposed? The room was silent, but for the beaming smiles on every face. Jeremy stood and the rest of us rose with him. Then you are hereby accepted. Welcome to the Pack Duke. Champer the Duke, DeCarlin High Schooler 4. Hours later, the rest of my lunch period had been a whirlwind of excitement. I returned to the cafeteria to sit with my new human pack. Daniel tried to explain to me that it wasn't really how humans worked, and that they were mostly joking with the whole ritual thing. I made a note to research human humor later because I really didn't get it. It didn't matter, though, because their acceptance did seem to be genuine. They insisted on replacing my missing lunch with some of their own food. Carrots, grapes, and a wonderful blend of salted grains and nuts called trail mix. Charlie also got a chance to try my Barum grain bar, which he described as granola if it were made of spinach, Brussels sprouts, and lima beans. This seemed to entertain the other humans despite his apparent distaste for it. He still gave me a large fruit in exchange. Altogether, it was more than I could eat, but they insisted I take all of it. I was also instructed to meet them outside the school once classes were done, which is where I found myself now. The entrance opened out into a small plaza and garden with benches and plant life from various planets. The dome of the orbital station soared high overhead, a hexagonal pattern of support beams slightly obscuring the view of the stars beyond. A bright green speck marked the closest planet. It was uninhabitable, as were all planets in the system. It was important for a diplomatic hub like this to be in neutral territory with few resources to fight over. I turned my attention back down, to the fruit Charlie had gifted me while I waited. A honey-crisp apple, about half the size of my head. It was a beautiful mix of yellows and reds. I planned to present it to my father when I arrived, and told him about my day. I was slowly turning it in my hands to admire the colors when a pale blue hand snatched it from my grasp. Scavenging the scraps of superior races as usual, DeCarlin? The flat face of the Neverans split in a menacing grin, showing off a row of pointed fangs. I had managed to avoid them or any of the other hostile species for the afternoon, but it seems that their leader, Maki, had caught up to me. His usual retinue of fellow Neverans was close behind, snickering at my torment. I tried my best to play the diplomat. That is mine, Maki. Please return it. Or what? He glared as he casually tossed the apple into the air, catching it with a soft tap before tossing it again. Honestly, I don't even know why your people bothered sending a delegation out here. You have no strength to offer an alliance and no goods to trade. Unless you want to return to base labor for your betters, then you should stick to your own little mudball of a planet. I had heard the same many times before, both from Maki and any number of other haughty species that looked down on my people for their humble origins. It was a struggle to keep my composure. I wanted to yell. I wanted to cry. I wanted to headbutt him right in the gut. The soft tap of the apple felt like it was mocking me as he tossed it again and again. Each time I felt my anger and fear rise, a little bit more, like it was ticking toward whatever humiliating conclusion he had in store for me this time. So when the sound abruptly stopped, it took me a moment to realize that Maki was no longer holding it. Throughout the greater galactic community, DeCarlins were on the smaller side. Neverons were closer to the average, with Maki standing head and shoulders over me. Humans, while not the largest, were certainly above average. I barely came up to the waist of the taller ones in the pack, and even the shortest of them loomed over the pale blue assholes, as Daniel called them, the same Daniel who had caught my apple in midair over Maki's head. "Hey Duke, are these guys bothering you?" Maki's eyes dilated as he whirled around to face the newcomer, only to stumble back a step when he found himself at chest level to the much taller being. "This doesn't concern you, human," Maki declared, drawing back to his full height. "I believe it does. Since we are here to escort the Duke as the newest member of our pack." "We?" he asked, as Daniel pointed a thumb back to the group of Neverons, standing nervously beneath the shadows of his fellow humans. Some were attempting to make small talk with them, with one even giving the Neveran a rather firm and vigorous handshake. "You don't have a problem with our new friend, do you?" Daniel asked, his voice full of concern as Maki's focus returned. To him. No, of course not." Maki stuttered a bit as Daniel leaned down, looking directly into his inky black eyes with his own brown ones. He flinched as Daniel's free hand landed on his shoulder. "That's good, because a problem with one of our friends is a problem with us, and I would hate for us to have a problem." He patted Maki's shoulder, jostling him with each impact as he stepped past him and handed the apple back to me. "Now then, it's time to get you home, Duke. I didn't want you to worry about keeping up with us, so I grabbed one of these. To give you a ride." He tugged at a strap across his chest and turned to show a handle and a small, narrow platform attached to his back. "We made these for our Vulthian friends, and I keep one in my locker just in case. Grab the handle and climb on up." He kneeled down to put the handle within my reach. Tucking the apple under my arm, I grabbed hold and planted my hooves on the platform. Once he felt my weight, Daniel rose back up to his full height and gently adjusted to make sure we were both stable. It was interesting seeing the world from this new perspective. I felt tall, and for the first time, I found myself looking down at my tormentor. Goodbye, Maki. We will see you tomorrow. I called down to the confused and nervous Neverin. Daniel called out to the humans still mingling with the rest of Maki's crew, and they quickly separated from them to join us. Daniel and I were turning away when a yelp made me look back to Maki, who was holding his tail with an indignant expression. Oops, sorry. Still getting used to people with tails. Jeremy apologized as he stepped past, looking up to me and blinking one eye in a deliberate gesture of some kind. I dipped my horns in greeting as he joined up with Daniel and I, the two humans bumping fists in yet another odd mannerism. I clearly had a lot to learn about my new pack. Today was a reminder of how unique each species could be. Their values, their attitudes, and the way they treated others could vary wildly. It was hard to know what anyone was like until you got to know them. One thing I did know was that for once, I was looking forward to my next day of school. Daniel kneeled down and allowed me to step off of the xenomobility harness in front of my home. I had tried walking with the humans for part of the way here, but as the existence of the harness implied, I had trouble keeping up with them with my much shorter legs. They also did not take any breaks on the long walk across the Grand Orbital Trade Station, meaning we arrived home in nearly half the time it would take me to walk on my own. Most of the humans had split off toward their residential area halfway here, leaving just Daniel, Jeremy, and I to stand before the doors. The building served as both home and embassy for my people here on the station, but despite the dual function, it was a rather modest structure. Other embassies were soaring edifices, adorned with crystalline architecture, gilded with precious materials, or highlighted with holographic murals. My home, by comparison, was only 2 stories adorned in the earthen tones of my people's traditional wood carvings and woven tapestries. Hey, Jeremy, check out the details on the frame here. Duke, are these all plants from your homeworld? Daniel was closely examining the carvings of vines around the doorframe. Yes, they are all from our planet Madokwa. That one is a zucca vine. You can tell by the diamond-shaped leaves and small clusters of orange berries. There are also ginja fruits carved into the window frame and flower moss around the exterior baseboards. All of the carvings were handmade using traditional tools and wood from my people. Handmade? You don't see that much anymore. I bet. Your world would be great for a camping trip, Jeremy mused as he leaned in to inspect some of the work. What's camping? The phrase only translated to outdoor leisure activity, which didn't really tell me much. Jeremy straightened up and looked up towards the domed exterior of the orbital station in thought. Oh, well, it's where you go and, live in the woods for a few days. You bring all the stuff you need, like food and temporary shelter, and you just kind of exist in nature for a while. I don't know, I've never really had to describe camping before. Careful, man, don't short-circuit yourself. It's just something we do for fun, Duke. It's relaxing to get away from the noise of the big cities for a while. Anyway, we had better get home before our parents start to worry. We'll see. You at school tomorrow? Okay, see you then. The humans wiggled their hands at me as they turned to leave. I really needed to look up more human gestures and mannerisms, I thought, as I opened the overly tall doors and stepped into the comfortable greeting room. Carved wooden chairs, sized for various species, were spread around small tables of equally varying height. Paintings of Madokwa landscapes adorned the walls, featuring the towering trees and lush forests that we had worked so hard to rehabilitate after generations of abuse. Good afternoon, Duclair. Back from school already? Loxy, one of the few staff here, greeted me from the DeCarlin-sized front desk. Were those humans that you arrived with? She gestured to the security monitor on the desk with her ears cocked in concern. Good afternoon, Loxy, and yes, the humans accepted me into their pack today. I finally have some friends at school, I declared with a happy whistle. Loxy's look of concern did not seem to dissipate. Joined their pack. You don't need to help them hunt or something, do you? They're not beasts, Loxy. They don't go hunting. At least I think they don't. Surely Daniel would have mentioned something like that. Okay, you're right. That was a rude assumption. I've just heard a lot about how dangerous humans are. I want to make sure you're safe. Well, so far I'm much safer with them. I better head upstairs. I want to tell my parents the news. Out! I trotted around the front desk and into the main hallway. It was decorated much like the greeting area, with doors to a few small offices and larger meeting rooms. A small door just behind the front desk led to a spiral staircase, and my hooves clacked on wooden planks as I made my way to the residences on the second floor. The first floor being twice as tall as usual to accommodate the larger galactic species meant twice as many steps for me to climb. With a huff, I emerged onto the second floor and quickly opened the door to the ambassador's suite. "Hi, Mom. I'm home. I have good news," I called as I made my way over to the kitchen. Mom was tending to a pot that smelled of the heavenly herbs and veggies of home. I trotted up to the counter and set down the apple expectantly as she turned to greet. "Me, you're here early. What's the good news? Exams aren't for a while yet, so it can't be about your grades." She paused as she noticed the large fruit on the counter. "What's this?" "This is a Honeycrisp apple, a gift from my new friends," I declared proudly. "New friends? Well, that is wonderful news. Help me set the table while I message your father. I'm sure he wouldn't mind stepping away a bit early." She wiped her hands and tapped out a message on her datapad. "Did your friends say how this should be prepared?" "They eat it as is, but Jeremy said I might have to cut it up." "Jeremy? I haven't heard that name before." Mom pulled a large knife from the drawer and sliced the apple into even sections as I spooned the stew into bowls and brought them to the table. "What species are they?" "What species are who?" Father asked as he came into the room and settled into his chair with a heavy sigh. "Oh, it smells wonderful as always, dear. Just what I need after the day I've had." "Did the meeting with the Aldeni not go well?" Mom asked. "No, the meeting didn't happen at all." "Something came up just as it always does. I swear every day is just an endless series of excuses and reschedules." He rubbed his forehead for a moment before giving his horns a shake. "But let me leave those woes in the woods, as it were. What were you two discussing? Does it have something to do with this other delightful scent?" Mom had just placed a small plate of apple slices down in front of him, the firm white flesh an interesting contrast to the colorful exterior. She set a plate down for herself and I as well, and I picked up the same sweet and floral scent from them that Father mentioned. "Yes." I quickly took my seat and picked up one of the slices. "This apple is a gift from my new friends at school. I have been accepted into the humans pack," I declared triumphantly. Both of my parents froze for a moment, their ears high in surprise. The apple slice in my father's hand hovering just before his mouth. Mom was the first to recover, giving me the same look of concern as Loxie had. "Noremov, you sure that it's a good idea to mingle with humans, Dukler? We don't know much about them, and what I have heard is that they're dangerous. Right, dear?" She turned to Dad, who had put the fruit back down and was now tugging on the tuft of fur at his chin as he looked at me with a serious, calculating stare. It would be more accurate to say they are capable. They have not been openly aggressive or hostile due cause or provocation. What were they like? Was there anything required of you to join them? They were actually very nice. I just asked if I could join them, and they agreed. I didn't feel the need to tell them about the ritual. Daniel had said it wasn't really a normal thing anyway. I told them about our people, and we shared some food at lunch. Then we met up after school to walk home. Interesting. My father was deep in thought as I debated telling them the last part of the story. They already knew the Neverons had been tormenting me at school. Unfortunately, there wasn't much they could do about it besides file complaints with the administration that just got ignored. Oh, well, I sowed the seeds. Might as well harvest them. Actually, there is one more thing. There was another incident with the Neverons today. They made it look like an accident, of course, but the humans saw. They called it classic bullying, so they must be familiar with such tactics. My ears drooped in shame as I relived the incident. I took a deep breath to steady myself before I continued. They tried again after school while I waited to meet my new friends. When they arrived, the humans intervened and chased the Neverons off. Daniel actually told them that an attack on me would be considered an attack on them as well. I wasn't sure how my parents would react to this part of the story. Father had warned me against fighting back before. He said it would only escalate the conflict, that we should find a different, more diplomatic approach. My face was flushed with embarrassment as my father leaned forward, his gaze piercing into me. "Do you know what you've done, Ducal Hair? You have used the moral code and protective instincts of a very dangerous race to serve your own interests by forming a defensive pact." He leaned back, and his expression shifted from serious to warm amusement. "You have a bright future as a diplomat." Mom still looked a bit worried, as Dad picked up one of the apple slices and bit into it. I did the same, the snap of the flesh giving way to a wonderful blend of tart and sweetness. What does that mean, dear? Mom asked. It means I have a few messages to send after dinner. Daniel Rogers, human high schooler. Mom, I'm home, I called out as I kicked off my shoes and rubbed my shoulders for the 10th time. How did those soldiers run around carrying Vulthians in those harnesses? Duke wasn't even as big as them, and I could feel the knot in my back from carrying him home. Tomorrow would definitely be Jeremy's turn as pack mule. You're late. Did you detour through the bazaar again? Your father made chili tonight, and he'll be disappointed if you ruined your appetite with street food, Mom called from the living room down the hall. I could hear laughter coming from the TV. Almost ready, just making the cornbread. Dad responded from the kitchen, accompanied by the sizzle of a hot pan. No, Mom, we were walking our new friend home. Have you heard of the DeCarlins? I stepped around the corner and saw she was rewatching a rerun of an improv comedy show. Oh, is this the one where he does the bit about birds? You just missed it? I still can't believe how many he just rattles off like that. Mom laughed a bit as she picked up the remote and paused the show before they could launch into another monologue. And to answer your first question, I can't recall. At the very least, they are not one of the species we are currently in talks with. But there are a lot of people out there. Is your new friend one of them? I walked around the couch and sat down on Dad's recliner. Yeah, he came up to us at lunch and asked to join our pack, weirdly enough. Jeremy and the others gave him the runaround for a while, but he was pretty cool about it. My dad chuckled as he walked over, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He was wearing his Galaxy's Best Cook apron with a picture of the Milky Way on a barbecue grill. Ha, they must have found something about pack hunting in our species overview and FAQ. Some of these Xenos seize on the weirdest facts. He leaned on the back of the couch and draped the towel over his shoulder as Mom fixed me with a hard stare. You set him straight about that, didn't you? She asked. Well, Daniel, kind of. I did say we don't do packs like that, and that Jeremy was just joking with him about it, but I'm not sure if he believed me. My mom sighed and gripped her brow. Of course Jeremy would encourage it. Well, make sure they understand that we're not some kind of crazed animal. Society or something, okay? There are enough rumors about us going around the galaxy already. Yes, Mom. I rolled my eyes and flopped back into the chair's plush cushions. And feel free to invite him over for dinner, Dad chimed in. Just let me know so I can look up what his people can eat. Don't want to have another incident? Like we had with the Alderney? I shuddered as I remembered both the appearance of the giant insect aliens and the incident where one nearly died from eating pineapple at a public function. Any other potential diplomatic incidents I should know about? Mom asked. Well, we met some Nevarans. Do we have any deals with them? I asked, cringing slightly. If I thought Mom's stare was hard before, this was twice as bad as she sat on the edge of the couch and leaned forward. We are in the middle of negotiating a very sensitive trade deal with the Nevarans. What happened, Daniel? They've been bullying the Duke, and we told them to leave him alone. The Duke? Oh, our new DeCarlin friend. His real name, if Duclair, but we decided to call him the Duke. We got his permission first. I held up my hands in surrender. What kind of bullying are we talking about? Mom's tone hadn't changed. She was in full damage control, information gathering mode, stealing his lunch and tripping him in the cafeteria in front of everybody. Be that as it may, Daniel, it's not our place to go around telling the rest of the galaxy how to behave, Dad chided. Mom may be the ambassador, but as a research anthropologist, Dad was passionate about not interfering in other cultures. Your father's right, Daniel. That should be handled by the school. Administration, not you and your friends. This isn't a one-time thing, Mom. I bolted upright in the chair, returning their ire with my own. Duke said they've been doing this for months, and the administration hasn't done anything. We can't just sit by and watch them torment. His people used to be slaves to the Nevarans, and they still treat him like he's beneath them. All right, Daniel, let's settle down a little. I didn't say we couldn't do anything. We can report any incidents to the school alongside Duclair's parents. More people reporting makes it more likely they will respond. Now you need to explain this business about them being slaves. I sat back again and explained the situation as best I could remember from what Duke had told me. Mom was serious and kept a neutral face throughout, while Dad's brow furrowed further as the story went. That is a concerning accusation. I will have to look into it for confirmation. Duke wouldn't lie, I said. some of the anger, from earlier returning. Mom held up a hand. We don't know him or his people well enough to say that for certain, Daniel. We will verify before we do anything with this information. The beeping of the oven sent Dad off to the kitchen and signaled the end of the discussion. For now, let's all relax and have some dinner. I sighed as I stood and trudged into the kitchen. The smell of Dad's chili and fresh cornbread did wonders to lift the mood, but I couldn't help but worry for Duke. Amber Rogers, Human Ambassador, the next morning, 8 a.m. Good work. Michael, go ahead and get some rest. I can take it from here. The call switched off and I stood from my home office chair to stretch. The worst part of pulling an all-nighter is always the stomachache I get from drinking too much coffee. Regardless, I took another sip from my lukewarm and half-empty mug. After Daniel's revelation last night, I had called up one of our paralegal staff and spent hours searching through records from the greater Galactic community's archives and reading through hundreds of pages for the information we needed. About 4 hours ago, we had finally found it, a footnote in the records from the Neverans' first contact and community induction paperwork. The transport of all people from First, Contact Race B to the mining planet Madokwa, along with reparations for subjugation in the form of supplies, ships, and credits. A quick cross-reference confirmed that this was the homeworld of the Decarlins. Another 2 hours of research turned up no documented follow-up to confirm those reparations. The next hour was spent drafting a report and sending it up the command chain. It would probably be a while before I heard back from the higher-ups, but I knew what their response would be. If there was one policy that humanity unanimously agreed upon, it was that we would not make deals with slavers. Some might consider the Neverans a gray area, but their behavior showed no remorse, repentance, or even acknowledgement of the wrongness of their actions. They only did the right thing when they were forced to, and still sought to suppress them however they could. Thankfully, I was head of the negotiation with the Neverans, and I had the authority to make a quick call before that. Final verdict came in. I selected the contact and waited for the connection to go through and the recipient to prepare themselves. The white screen blinked and shifted to the familiar face of the Neveran diplomat. Good morning, Ambassador Rogers. I was not expecting to hear from you so early in the day. Are you going to tell me the changes we discussed have been approved? He smiled a jagged and toothy smile. I'll admit, the Neverans had been rather quick to learn our ways and mannerisms. I'd even come to think of them fondly in our dealings over the past few weeks. But this morning it all felt hollow and manipulative. Unfortunately not. Ambassador Jovi, I am calling to discuss something that has come to our attention in your contract. If you will direct your attention to page 24, paragraph 10, it contains an exclusivity clause that we are not comfortable with. We would prefer to keep our options open in regards to trading with other species. A sneaky clause buried in the fine print ensured that a trade deal with them would prevent us from forming a similar relationship with anyone else in their sector of space, a sector that only included one other species. The only possible purpose to this clause was to lock out a minor player with only a single planet and few resources to their name. It was spiteful, pure, and simple. The Neveran ambassador had finished, pulling up the document and finding the clause specified. Well, I assure you, Ambassador Rogers, this is a standard clause that is in all of our contracts. It's a simple protection of our interests, certainly nothing that anyone has complained about before. That area of the contract is really not up for negotiation. He gave a nervous laugh and put on his best approximation of a human smile. Regardless, if you are not willing to remove the clause, then we will be tabling the contract for the time being while we look into other options. Thank you for your time, Ambassador Jovi. He was about to protest as the call cut off, and my screen returned to a calming view of Earth as taken from the original International Space Station. I could have said more, been more direct, but from what I learned, they deserved to stew about it for a bit. I sighed and downed the rest of my now cold coffee. I would need to rest soon, but there was one more task I needed to finish first. I quickly started up another call to my administrative assistant. Good morning, Amber. Not in the office today? No, not today, David. I just finished an all-nighter for the Neveran deal. Can you look something up for me? I need to know what contact we've had with the Decarlin representatives on station. Decarlin? That doesn't ring a bell, let me see. Here we go. They have requested a meeting a few times, but we have had difficulty fitting them into our schedule. We've been pretty popular since we set up shop here, and they are a fairly minor player. Oh, looks like we received a new request from them just last night? Excellent. Go ahead and cancel my meetings with the Neverins for this week. Cancel them? I thought you said you were working all night on that deal. Don't worry. You'll hear the buzz about them soon, I'm sure. Once that's done, go ahead and let the Dicarlins know we have an opening in our schedule for them. Thanks for diving into this story with me. Don't miss out on the next one. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a big thumbs up, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think.